What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast, where we talk about all things pertaining to life on and off the fireground. The views and the opinions expressed are those of your host and our guest. Today we sit down with Glynn Ross. He's a former Marine and engineer with the city of Phoenix. We talk about a career-ending accident that he experienced a couple years ago. We talk about his history with the Marine Corps and some of the lessons he's learned. We talk about training and the roles and responsibilities of a senior firefighter and a captain. It's a fantastic podcast. I hope you enjoy. So, Glynn, I want to talk to you about the accident and the aftermath and the relative shitstorm that was for you and is for you in your life. But I also want to talk about who you are and kind of what you're, there's some things that you have in your history that I think are really, really cool and are interesting factors in the makeup of who you are and the ability to tolerate the challenges that you're facing. So I think that goes together. So let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Glynn Ross. I drive engine 925 on A shift, the BLS engineer over there. Been on the department since 2008. Got hired. I was a red shirt for 3 years. We have the record. That was like 31 months or so. So we got hired in 2008.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, it was. Well, the best part is when you walk into the station and guys are like, "Hey, man, I heard you weren't going through the academy for like 3 years." And you're like, "Cool, man. Thanks for the update. Here's your mail."
Right.
but I remember when we got hired, they ended up injuring my hand, so I had to go request to be a red shirt. Yeah. Thinking it'd only be one class because I wasn't sure if my hand was going to be healed up in time. I thought they would fire me. That's when guys were hiring thousands and thousands of guys, testing. Yeah. And so I requested to be a red shirt, and they're like, "Yeah, there's a chance it could be a year, but it's never been that long." Yeah. And then ended up being almost 3 years.
Yeah. We jumped right to fire department. So let me take you back further in time.
Got it.
To which we'll get back. We'll come back to that. Longest red shirt ever piece. Clearly, it scarred you. It's just you want to start right there.
We're right to the nightmare.
Let me tell you about my trauma first, right off the bat.
Right.
So where did you grow up? First of all, were you a Phoenician?
Grew up right here. Yeah, born and raised native, Phoenix, Arizona. Grew up like 59th Avenue Greenway. Right. Went to Cactus High School. Graduated in 2000. It's great. I joined the Marine Corps in 2002. Loved it.
Why the gap? What'd you do there?
Honestly, I was like a skinny little runt in high school. I couldn't even bench 135. Literally, I would put 2 plates on there, and I'd struggle. I couldn't get 135, but I'd put the 35s. I could do it like 3 times, and I look at the board. I'm like, oh yeah, my max is 150. I was short, skinny. I didn't have my growth spurt. So my dad actually gave me the best advice ever. He goes, "Hey, why don't you just wait a year, 2 years, get stronger, bigger, more mature, and then go in."
And you were aspiring, like, I'm going to go 100%. Do this thing. Okay.
100%. And I just didn't know when, but I absolutely wanted to. I always actually, the truth be told, I always wanted to be a Navy SEAL, but I hated their uniforms. Hated it. I just hated it. So, and my uncle was in the Navy, and so then somebody had said, Marine Corps has Recon and Force Recon.
And here's their uniforms.
And then I'm like, oh, I like that. And so that's literally how and then after, I didn't really know when. And then I remember I was working for a construction company and 9/11 happened. I'm like, you know what? It's time.
Yeah. And
I remember the day I was driving down the 202 way out there, and I had turned around and drove right to my mom's office off I-17 in Peoria. I'm like, hey, it's time. We had a long talk, and she was, I figured it would be. Yeah. So it was.
So let's talk about that pipeline a little bit, because, most folks don't go in and, say, hey, I want to do Force Recon and get that billet. Right. So how does that, what's the pipeline for that? So you go open contract infantry or?
Exactly. Yeah. You go open contract. And I had told my recruiter and him and I always joked about it because he gets everyone, comes, hey, I want to be recon, or I'm sure like the Navy recruiters, hey, I want to join, I want to be a SEAL, but the actual percentage is like less than 0.5% of who's going to make it. So I'm sure at the time he was like, oh yeah, man, right here. Yeah, you're like, good.
Okay.
Off you go, man. You'll be there in no time.
Right.
And to fast forward, once I finally made it and was accepted into the recon school and I graduated, my recruiter actually showed up which was pretty awesome. And so I had a hard time.
He needed to see that 1 in a million.
Yeah. So I went through boot camp in California, and then I went to infantry there, and then they had the recon guys come and talk to you.
Cool.
And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And so you go do the recon in-doc.
What's that entail?
It's fairly basic. You got to run 3 miles under 18 minutes. It was like 200 sit-ups in 2 minutes, 20 pull-ups. So
you got to have like a 300 PFT is like the
exactly
gateway piece.
Pretty much, or you better be like a 295, 290.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the standard. 20 dead hang pull-ups, all that stuff. And then there's some swim stuff, some swim qual there. I want to say it was like 500 meters and like your camis. There's a tread water test. There's a obstacle course a couple times. I mean, it's okay. It's basically like a basic screening.
Okay.
And that's to get accepted to go over to the school. So once I had passed that, I mean, there might be, when you get something like that, you have all kinds of guys that don't even really know about it. And they're like, oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, I'm going to go do that. So you might show up and there'd be 50, 60 guys or 100 guys, but they're only going to take 5, maybe 10.
Right. So
you got to be up there to kind of.
Yeah.
And so did well on that. And then I get my orders and it says Norfolk, VA. And I was like, man, where the heck's that at on this base? Like, someone's like, dude, you're going to Virginia. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm like, dude, that's Norfolk, Virginia. I was like, oh, damn. And sure enough, graduated infantry and off to Virginia I went. And I'm actually really glad I did because I was able to get some other schools while I was over there. But the main thing is I went through Fort Story. So there's 2 recon bases, or at least this is back in 2003. They had 2. One was at Fort Story Army Base in Virginia, and one was that's ARS, the Amphib Recon School, and then you have BRC, the Basic Reconnaissance Course here in Coronado.
Go, copy.
I'm not positive if those 2 are even still around, but the one in Virginia, it's an abandoned Army base. There's nobody there. There's nobody there to save your ass. It's not like we're out there on the grinder and all of a sudden here comes the chief walking by, or there's nobody. It's you and the RTOs.
Yeah.
And you can't really say that, one's better than the other. I was fortunate enough to actually go to both because I got injured. So you go over there. I was in what's called RMAT. That's Recon Marines Awaiting Training. It's kind of like our red shirt.
Okay.
But you're basically just getting hazed. You're getting worked. It's just all day. They're just basically preparing you to go over. And so by the time you take the recon screening, there's 50, 60 guys. They'll take 5 or 10. Then you get over to RMAT, and they'll take those 5 or 10, 5 or 10, 5 or 10 to make up the RMAT class.
Copy.
Right? And then out of those, some guys or a lot of guys will then fail out of that as well. Because it could be 3 months depending on when the schoolhouse starts, And then so I got over to the recon school, and I was there and pretty much made it through almost to the end, and I started getting bad shin splints. Real bad shin splints turned into stress fractures, getting worse and worse and worse. I remember talking to my dad the night before. He goes, hey, how's your leg doing? I go, it's horrible. And every Friday we would do a 10-mile, 50-pound pack run. If you pass or just stay up with the instructor, you get limo on the weekend, which nobody really goes out anyway because you're just exhausted from the week, right? You're smoked. And so I said, if it's going to break, it's going to break on Friday. It's going to be bad. And I said, I can barely walk because you're constantly running your boots, your gear.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You have a 50-pound sandbag they call your ID card. So you put your name, your social, your blood type, and you got to carry on your ID card. So everywhere you go, you got your 50-pound ruck with you.
Yeah. Are you running like Alice packs at the time?
Exactly. The old school Alice's. Put it up top in that radio pouch.
Yeah.
And everywhere you go, from out to the beach, you're doing your PT, you're doing your classes. It's with you everywhere.
Yeah. Right? I can't think of a more comfortable way to carry a 50-pound rock.
It's terrible. And you better damn sure make sure it's waterproof, right?
Oh, right, yeah, for sure.
And so he goes, well, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, well, tomorrow's a swim day with the instructors. We're kind of winding down last couple of weeks. I think we're actually playing water polo with the instructors. And I remember I went the next morning. I could barely walk, and I tell I went to the corpsman. I go, hey, I got really, really bad shin splints and stress fractures. And he goes, I don't give a fuck, get in the water, because it's a safety hazard. So they told us at the very beginning of the class, hey, if you get shin splints, you have to tell us. Well, of course I'm not going to say anything. I want to pass the school, right?
Yeah.
So I get in the water. I'm kind of hanging out on the side. Well, they throw me the ball, and I go to throw and shoot, and just a twisting motion in the water.
As you're kicking your feet, yeah.
My tib fib snaps in 2 places.
Holy crap.
Tibia and fibia in the pool. Snapped. And I go, I just broke my fucking leg. Broke my leg. And everyone's like, dude, we're in 9 feet of water. Like, what? Well, the corpsman jumps in, drags me off the side, and they pull me out of the pool, and my leg is like flopping. I mean, it's flopping.
Yeah.
Like a wet noodle. And everyone's like, oh my gosh. And so, long story short, I had a full leg cast from all the way down to my toe for about 5 months. Had to completely start over.
Yeah.
Start over from scratch. Went back to the recon school. I had to go back, probably 7-8 months later, redo the NDOC, go back through RMAT, go back through ARS again for the second time.
Yeah.
I made it about a couple days further than what I made it the previous time and blew up my ACL.
Holy crap.
Had to start over a second time.
And how long of a period of time is that?
Oh, man, it was a couple of years.
Yeah.
It was from like 02, beginning of 02 to probably end of 03.
Yeah. Well, so you're several months in the program, and then the injury, and then the recovery from the injury.
Yeah.
And
so I went from almost making it a second time, and then they sent me back to North Carolina, and everyone was deploying at the time. And I remember going in front of this chief and this gunny, and he's like, "Hey, are you deployable or not?" I go, "No, I have to have surgery." So now they send me over to a platoon of basically all the fuck ups, the guys who are getting discharged out of the military. A couple guys that were hurt. One guy punched a staff sergeant. One guy just never shows up. And I'm like, I went from the highest level, almost making it, to literally the lowest level. Like, how am I gonna get out of this?
Right.
So now let's fast forward. I stayed focused, and my first sergeant comes in because I was trying to get over to Recon Battalion when I was going through the schools. That's where you would start out at. And my first sergeant comes in because I was a Lance Corporal at the time in E3, and he goes, "Hey, the Force guys are having their NDOC on Thursday. The problem is you have to be an NCO, you have to be E4 or above." He goes, "We're going to put you up on a meritorious corporal board on Wednesday. If you pass that on Wednesday, you can go take the NDOC on Thursday, possibly get there on Friday." And I'm like, whoa, huge opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm like,
hold on, I'm missing a piece. Mm-hmm. Did you even finish the pipeline?
No, I haven't got there yet.
Okay.
I haven't got there yet.
Okay.
And so just to get accepted in there. And most guys do. So
so the Force Recon's a separate pipeline.
Correct.
Okay, copy.
So you have you either do like 2 deployments with a Recon Battalion or 4 years, and then you can take the Force NDOC and go over, right? And so Recon does a lot more like surveillance and stuff, and the Force guys are actually more of the trigger pullers. They're the ones that actually conduct the raids, that kind of stuff. And so I had the opportunity to basically bypass that and went on the Meritorious Corporal Board. I ended up getting promoted.
Nice.
And then getting promoted, I remember putting on my alphas and going over to the Force, ready to check in on Thursday, and the Sergeant Major, remember Sergeant Major Bly at the time, just big old jack dude, and he was out of his office, and I'm supposed to be taking the NDOC, if I basically accepts the orders, and so I remember standing outside of his office for like 3 hours. I stood there. The girls were like, "Hey, would you like to come back later?" I go, "Nope, no ma'am, I'm gonna wait right here." I stood there, waited for him to come back. I waited, and I gave him my orders, and he gave me the old stamp, and I took the NDOC the next day, and
nice.
Yeah. So then now I still have to go through the recon school,
right?
So I got accepted, but I still have to pass the school. So now I'm back at square one. So I trained, got on a strict meal plan. I was swimming a lot because with my leg, I was still healing up. And so the night before the NDOC, my buddy says, he goes, "Hey, man," everyone was getting a 96 and going home. I wasn't going anywhere. Like, I'm just focused, right? He goes, "Hey, man, come out to the car races with us. My wife and I are going to go watch some car races in North Carolina." I'm like, "No, I'm good, man. I'm just stay right here. Just get some good food, get some good sleep." He's like, "Dude, you're going to crush. You've already done this. This is going to be your 3rd time." Like, what? It's just a screening, right? So we get there. I go, "All right, man, I'll go." So I got my water, my electrolytes and stuff. And we get there and we go to get out of the car. And he had like an older Nova. And I'm climbing out of the back seat. And his wife slams the door, breaks my thumb in 2 places.
What the hell? Bro.
We're going to get struck by lightning in this office.
You have the worst luck.
The worst luck. Frick? And, smashes my hand. I go to the hospital that night. And, it is in the military. It's not like I'm like, you're not putting a cast on. He's like, I'm absolutely putting a cast on. You're not putting a cast on. Well, that's not how it goes. I outrank you. This is the military. Like, it's not like today right. where you're like, anyway. He throws this giant cast on there. I'm like, I have my screening in like 7 hours. Like, what the hell?
Right.
And so I go home, and I remember my thumb was just full of blood from getting smashed, So I sat there with the little drill bit with my hand and ended up popping it, release the pressure. And the next morning I go back and do the screening, and I remember sitting in my Jeep Cherokee that I had with a pair of dikes, and I cut that thing off, took some Motrin, and went out there and took my screening and got accepted and passed. And after that, I gave the corpsman there the x-rays, make you guys rewrap my hand. And they're like, what the hell?
Here's the halves of my cap. Can you put this back on me?
Yeah. So I had a little bit of trouble getting over there. And then I end up getting orders to the BRC. So I had gone through ARS twice and then the BRC, and I finally passed BRC and got it. And then I made it, and then I started the whole pipeline and stuff.
Nice.
And then I won't say smooth sailing, but a lot smoother than the start. The start was a little rough, but
yeah. Oh, that's great, man. I have a funny. So I was with 1st Tank Battalion, which was stationed at Las Pulgas, or right off Las Pulgas, and right next to 1st Force Recon.
Yeah. And
one of my favorite memories is I get up one morning, I don't go to the head or whatever, and I come out and I hear this little pitter patter. What the hell is that? And I go to the window and I look, and there's these trees that are blocking kind of the main view, but I can see under the bottom skirt of the tree, I see a pair of bare feet go running by. And then I see, evenly spaced out, I see another set of feet, about 6 feet back, bare feet running. And I'm like, what the hell? So I go down to the end of the barracks and throw open the door, and I go, what is going on out there? And I see these Force Recon knuckleheads carrying, 7-foot logs, however long they were.
Yeah.
2 by 2, right? Carrying these logs, and they're running to the beach. And, you're looking at me like, and I was like, I was amazed. I thought it was really cool. And it was one of those things I was like, man, I wish I had gone that way. And, because I always just really admired it and thought, man, that's badass. So super cool. And it was neat to be stationed near them. And
it was fun. I had an absolute blast. And so when I got over to the recon school there in Coronado, you have the SEALs and then you have the recon guys.
Yeah.
And you would think there would be animosity, just, rivalry, whatever. Absolutely zero. It's because you would start off on the beach. We'd be running with 50 guys. They'd be running with 80. We patch each other. Next day, we have 40. They have 30. Next day, we have 20. They have 10. It's like, and you'd be patching each other in the chow hall, and you're chafed, you're sandy, you're wet.
Everyone's miserable.
Everyone's miserable, and you're like, hey, man, dude, you're still here. Good on you.
Yeah.
I'm impressed, man. And it's just one of those, like, there was just like that mutual respect,
Yeah.
And there was zero animosity, man, because you're passing each other. And I remember we ran so far right there on Coronado Beach. I swear we went all the way to Mexico because I turned around and I couldn't even see the Hotel Del, the ginormous hotel. I was like, where the hell's the hotel at? Like, we're that far? Like,
that's pretty demoralizing.
How are we going to get back? Well, you're going to run back. And I was terrible at running, so I was always last. But had a great time, and then ended up going back and getting through went through the whole pipeline and went through jump, dive, SEER, and all that stuff. And
nice.
It was awesome. I enjoyed being on the East Coast because I got to go to like SEER school up in Maine and got like cold weather survival, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I mean, I'm from Arizona. I mean, even my dad was like, yeah, you're going to live in an igloo for a couple of days. I'm like, we're not living in an igloo. But sure shit you are. You just learn all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah. What, so what is it, what's something in SEER school that you remember that was remarkable to you or stood out to you?
Honestly, a couple of the civilian instructors were tough as nails. I mean, you're walking around, you got your mitts, around your neck, and this kind of, you're holding them in there. I mean, it was in Maine in February. You're walking around miserable. In deep snow.
Yeah.
And I remember some of the civilian instructors were like, real smart guys, outdoorsy guys, and they're like, yeah, we're under a creek right here. If you look at the map and this and that, and sure enough, he'd take off his snowshoe and start digging. They get onto ice, break the ice, full-blown running stream. But to the average eye, you're just walking through a cloud of snow, or to just a level of snow. I remember the guy reached down the water. I'm thinking, oh, hell no. Like, my hands are already frozen. This guy's putting his hands in the water.
Yeah.
Just tough as nails.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone has to get captured. Did you ever go through SEER at all?
No, but I'm familiar with it.
So there's different levels of SEER school. You know, or I think it's like level A, where it's where, you know, like maybe people on an aircraft carrier, the chance of them falling off, getting caught, you know, captured, slim to none. Then you have air pilots or whatever, the next level, and then you have like the level C for like the SF guys. And so you're going through with a bunch of guys, and yeah, it was fun, but you have to get captured. That's the whole. It's survival, evade, resistance, escape. So you have to go through every phase.
Right.
You know, your survival phase, your evasion phase, your resistance. You know, well, I didn't really know what to expect, but when you get captured, you go to a whole different part of the compound, whole different level. I remember we almost got to the point we were traveling to, and you know, they tell us like, hey, you gotta get from this point to that point in a couple days, whatever, right? Stay in these boundaries. Well, of course, everyone goes out of the boundaries and goes around and tries to get them. Well, it's obviously not the first time, but I saw.
Yeah, I'm sure the cadre's pretty familiar with this shenanigans.
Oh, yeah. You think you're going to outsmart them, you're not going to outsmart them.
Yeah,
and
they've been there a while.
I see the hut where I'm supposed to get to, and I'm like, oh, it's right there. Anyway, just kind of made a run for it on the second day, and this guy pops out from a sheet. You know, he's laying in snow, I'm thinking. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and I'm giving him, you know, my card. I'm, hey, I'm an American, this, that, you know, what you're supposed to do. And all of a sudden, just open hand, freezing cold, boom. I'm like, oh, damn.
Shit just got real.
Shit just got real right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, what in the hell? And boom, another one.
Did you have any, I mean, you had to know going in that there would be it would be physical.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a whole different level of physical. And this ain't one of those schools you're like, hey, man, I'm out. I quit. Nope. Ain't nothing like that.
Yeah.
You're not quitting. You're not,
Right.
I wouldn't anyway, but you're absolutely, it's not one of those times.
Right.
And so, yeah, they throw you in a cell and do the whole resistance stuff and, you know, interrogate you, and, you know, you go through the whole deal, and you're not eating, you're not hardly drinking, you don't know what day it is, you don't know what time it is.
Yeah.
You get to the point where you're almost kind of delusional because you're like, I haven't even seen any of my buddies in days.
Yeah, right.
I haven't seen anybody. And then you're like, I am out of school, right? This is a school.
Well, I was going to ask you, is there ever a time when you start to lose sense of?
You do. And they push you to that point. And it's a great learning technique or educational, like when you look back on it, because you get so delusional. You're like, I am out of school. Like, I am flying home in a few days.
So for those who are not familiar with it, like they're in costume, they're speaking foreign languages,
Correct.
like they're putting on a show,
a hell of a show,
to really get you to fail over to that mind, the mind game of it, I guess.
Correct.
The
it's just a mind game, and it's one of those where like you start with the first set of instructors that teaches you the first week, and then the second week it's completely different
so
people.
You're truly being captured.
They hog tie you. You know, throw it over your head, throw you in the back of a truck, drive you to where hold on the compound, and you don't see any of your friends, nothing. So then you're like, they push you to the point where you're like, I am out of school, right? I mean, this is a school, you know. And you start second guessing stuff, and because you haven't eaten, you're just delusional. You're cold, you're freezing. They throw you outside, inside. It's so. And then it's crazy, man. Like at whatever day it was, all of a sudden you're out in the yard and a big American flag flops down, and they start playing the national anthem. They're like, congratulations, you just graduated level C SEER school. And you're like, fucking mail me my diploma. I'm out of here. Get out of here.
I have no time for your ceremonies.
I'm out of here, dude. Like, I've had enough of this main stuff. I'm out.
Yeah.
And so, but it was great. It's one of those things I loved every part of it. I was single. I wasn't married at the time, so I was just traveling around, going to all these gnarly schools, and great time. But it just makes you push yourself to the point where you don't even know you could get pushed that far.
Yeah.
In all these schools, you know, you think you're done, and there's so many times you go through a school, going through dive school or whatever, and everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and maybe I might excel. You know, maybe you're better on land. You're a hell of a runner. You know, you could just crush guys. But then we get in the water. I'm a lot stronger in the water than you are. We kind of bounce off each other.
Yeah.
And so everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. You know?
When you reflect back on that, is there an experience you had in your life that you can identify that you're like, okay, this is why I have the fortitude or the crazy thread that in me that allows me to kind of get through this.
100%. And I was actually just talking about this a couple weeks ago with my son. Going through dive school, you get through dive school, and I remember sitting there in the chow line because you're in Panama City, Florida, and it's all SF guys there. Mm-hmm. It's all Recon guys, SEALs. There's the Air Force guys. There's Army Rangers. Just everybody, but it's all SF guys. There's no other, I won't say civilians, but no just standard military guys.
Yeah, no
there,
Gen
right?
Pop.
No Gen Pops, yeah. And I remember sitting in the chow line, and one of my buddies was like, he goes, "Hey, gee, look at this." He goes, "Yeah." And it was like the Military Times, and it came out with the top 5 hardest schools in all the military, all the branches. And we had just, dive school was 3 on that list. So we had done the 3 out of the 5 in that year. And at the time, it was like, cool, man. Like, dude, we got to go. We're late for our dive. Right. Just like, but then thinking back on it, and when I was going through dive school, so you know what the rebreathers are? Mm-hmm. So you're swimming with the twin 80s for the first, I don't know, probably 10 weeks, 8 weeks of the course, and you're working out 3 times a day. You're doing some calisthenics in the morning, you're doing like a pool swim in the afternoon, and then right before evening, you're doing some type of open water swim in the ocean. And you're basically building up your lungs, so when you go do that rebreather, you don't overwork the rig. Mm-hmm. You can't get in there and go, it won't clean it out enough. Like you can get hypoxic.
And I imagine the efficiency of your overall cardiovascular system is a big part of that.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yeah. And so you got to be able to swim, but also, keep your heart rate down, breathe normally, that kind of stuff. You get underwater and you're breathing heavily, you're out of shape or whatever, you're going to overwork that rig, you get hypoxia, you could drown.
Right.
And so you're working out 3 times a day. And then towards the end of the course, they introduced the Mark 25, which is the rebreather, the last few weeks of the course. So if you ever see some of the old school guys, they'll have gold wings and then a silver bubble. Mm-hmm. The silver bubble means they haven't gone through the rebreather.
Oh.
And then you get the gold, and gold, that means they have gone through that. So it's like most people nowadays, you'll just see the gold because they'll send guys back to the rebreather stuff.
Right away.
Yeah. But so you're working out 3 times a day, and then towards the end of the course, you do a 10K open water swim, big boy swim. And so they put you in these Zodiac. Well, you first start off, you get your wetsuit on, and they have these like jugs of Vaseline. They're like, "Hey, man, you guys put Vaseline, you're going to chafe up." And you're grabbing handfuls and throwing them here and throwing them there. And they're like, "You put a lot on." So they get you in the boats, and they take you out there, and you're on what's called a Budweiser line. It's a real long line, and they'll get like the top 5 swimmers, next five with your times over the course. That way, and then you're all connected, and those 5 will swim together. Those 5 will swim together.
Oh, okay.
But they take you out in this Zodiac, way the hell out in the middle of the ocean. And they're like, "Hey, Rain, swim at 340 degrees in a couple hours, you're going to see shore." And you're like, what the fuck? Like, what kind of plan is that? Like, everything we do on the fire department, there's safety this, safety that, safety standby, safety radio channel. None of that.
Right.
I mean, nope, not even the instructors. They drop you off, and you're in the middle of the ocean. You're looking around. You're like, boys, you want to talk about just getting real. Like, we are in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the guy in front, they're like, "You guys ready?" And sure enough, you just drop the mast down, and on your side, you're just sitting there finning, just swimming along. And sure enough, in about a few hours, you'll see shore. Awesome. It's one of those where you're like, dude, a 10K swim, man, that's gnarly.
It's a long way to go.
It's a long way. But,
and you guys are side stroking it the whole way?
So, yeah, you just got your fans, and you're basically just attached and just swimming along. And the guy in front will have his snorkel line, just reading the tack board. When you assume you have a tack board there, it's got your depth gauge, a watch,
compass,
and your compass and stuff. He's the one kind of tracking you. And sure enough,
hold that ass later,
baby. Yeah, it's when they take off, and you're like, "Wow, this is it. This is our plan." Yeah. And then you hear that boat just takes off,
disappears into the
and you're like, "Whoa, this just got real."
Yeah,
and off you go.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about sea critters?
Oh yeah, because it was like a month before we got there. There was some zoo up the way that a bunch of alligators got loose because one of the hurricanes. And so there's jellyfish all through there. You think of Florida, you're like, "Oh, it's tropical, it's clear." You see people. No, hell no. We were in the bay. It was mucky, filthy.
Yeah. Well, you can't train out in the clear water. You got to chew over some beautiful reef or something with gorgeous fish. No.
Like the recruiters, they show you, "Oh yeah, you're gonna join the military. You're gonna be riding jet skis." Like, no jet skis. No, man, you're swimming. So, but there's a bunch of jellyfish. Oh, so you swim along, you just feel it go across your face, and
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Does Vaseline help with that? Keep the stings off?
No, but you got a lot of buddies offering to piss on you if you need it. Good friends.
I heard about this. I heard this works.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But,
man.
But yeah, that's definitely one of them.
So was there ever a moment, I've talked to a lot of different guys over the years who've been going through these pipelines, and they say that the key, and I think this is important, I don't know if this is important or not, but the key is just that quitting is never, it's just not an option.
No.
Right? Because there's just so many moments when you're like, this is so miserable, I could just stop right now.
Correct.
And the pain goes away. And I know, that they offer that.
Oh, that's
like,
in front of your
standing
face
there
all
with
the
a hot
time.
cup of coffee going, hey, man, I got another one of these if you're interested.
Yep.
Just go ahead and quit.
Yeah, it's absolutely not an option.
Yeah.
And I think once you get to that point where you're like, I don't care what they do to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And then once the instructors find out that, hey, no matter what we do to this guy, it's almost like they leave you alone a little bit. But once you get to that point where you're like, it's not going to work. I might be dead last on this run. I might be dead last on this swim, but there's not a prayer's chance in hell you're going to get me to quit.
Right.
So move on. You almost kind of gain a little bit of respect from the instructors when you get that point. But also, if you're in the pool and you're struggling, they'll get out that hose and start spraying you and try and make you drown.
Right.
It's rough, but I was dead last on every run.
At what point did you know that you had that in you?
You just start getting tested and testing in ways that you never thought you would get tested. And you're like, oh man, I did really well. Or when you go to some schools and you see guys that you look up to that are way more knowledgeable, way more experienced. Like let's say like you and I and Paul went to a class and then all of a sudden you two drop out. And you're like, whoa, those are my mentors. Those are guys I look up to and they failed. Then you're like, how the hell am I going to make it if they failed out or dropped out? And you're like, man, maybe I am. This is where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
This is what I'm supposed to do here.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for me.
I think it's interesting because I asked that question because I think people don't always know how much they're capable of. And so when the dial gets turned and things get really, really hard,
correct,
and they go, I think I need to quit.
Right.
And I'm like, I think about my own life growing up and I'm like, at what point did I know that I could endure way more than I can endure? Right. Like, it's interesting. I don't know when I knew that. But at a certain point, as I was going through different trials in my life, right, different things, or even self-imposed trials like running fucking Ironman,
still pretty badass.
Well, in its own way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'll tell you this quick little story. I'm out on the marathon, and I had poor nutrition throughout the whole thing. But I get out on the back half of the marathon, and I'm having cramps in places that I didn't know I had muscle fiber. Right? I'm like, what is happening to my body right now? I'm like, doesn't matter. I said I would finish this.
Right.
And I was going to do. I'm going to run this in 9.5 hours, and I might finish. That's, right. I went through all the emotions, and I landed with, we might be able to finish this if we just keep moving. And that idea of relentless forward progress, despite the discomfort, despite the pain, and I don't know where that comes from, but I really admire that trait in people, the ability to say, this is really, really difficult, whether it's academically difficult, physically difficult, emotionally difficult, but to say, I will show up for that and lean into it.
Absolutely. And most people, it's kind of like that old saying, like, oh, everyone wants to be a fighter until they get punched in the face, Right. And then you're like, oh, whoa, I know this is going to happen. Kind of same scenario. Like there was times where stuff would happen or these long runs or these long swims. We do these swim runs and like go get sugar cookie, they call, where you go out in the ocean, come back up, sugar cookie, and then you start your day literally looking like a sugar cookie and just
wet
covered in sand. And you go to the chow hall, you're in class. Like it just, they make it so miserable. And you didn't even know coming into this stuff that how much they're going to push you.
Right.
And so I remember one day we did a swim run from the barracks to the pool, did a swim, and we're running back. Of course, I show up to the pool dead last because I'm terrible at running. And I get to the pool, and that's where I always excelled, was in the water. And it was a 60-meter pool. And they're like, hey, whoever can do a crossover, we'll give you a ride back to the base. You don't have to run. I was like, oh, I'm not coming up. Nope, not coming up. And so
that's a crossover is
underwater,
over and back,
the length of the pool.
Copy.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not coming up. Not happening. Not coming up. I will make this. And sure enough, we do our workout, and they're like, all right, everyone goes. And no one's making it, and I'm going. And I'm still a good probably 20, 25 feet away from the wall. And I'm doing like the trying to make it, and lights out. Shallow water blackout. And I wake up on the cool deck. Basically, I was swimming and then just stopped swimming, and they pulled me out. They put me on the cool deck, and I wake up, and I don't know what the heck's going on. And I remember one of the instructors, he's like, "Hey, good news." He goes, "Now you can run back with the class." And I was like, damn. It's like
not even a mercy, no mercy ride.
Not even a mercy ride, nothing. And sure enough, man, I look over and there's my running shoes that someone went and got for me. Like, thanks, pal. And
that's awesome.
They gave me about 5 minutes to come to, gave me a little bit of water and asked me if I needed one of the Motrins, because they give that for everything. You break a leg, you remember that? They hit me looking at a Motrin, and sure enough, I mean, I was blacked out.
You black out. Would you like a Motrin?
Yeah, exactly, right? And so I remember running back, and I was like, I literally just blacked out like 20 minutes ago, and now I'm running back to base. Like, it's a big boy school, big boy stuff. It's not, there is no breaks or whatever. It's zero sympathy.
Yeah.
I think maybe I gained a little bit of respect because I went far, but not really.
They were like, "Oh, that's nicely done. Well, get them out."
Yeah, good job, man. And you still failed, so get your shoes.
Right. That's awesome.
But woke up on the cool deck, and he's like, "Now you can run back with your class." I'm like, oh, cool,
man.
Thanks.
So after all that, how much? I mean, I feel like a lot of. How many years of service were you in at that point? You're finally force recon. To get to a home unit.
The first couple of years, I was like, I would test, I would get injured, and so it took me a while to get over there.
Yeah.
And so once I finally got over there, I want to say it was around probably end of 2003 at this time. And so, like I said, spent the first couple of years injured, trying again, and then I get over there and I finally pass. And then once you get over to the unit, then your guys kind of split up, and it's like, okay, if you don't have dive school, you go to dive school. If you don't have jump school, you go to jump school, and you kind of split up. So you kind of start banging out schools, and then you all come back together and do what's called a shooting package, where it's just like that CQB, the close quarter stuff, and breaching doors and all that kind of stuff, and you kind of work together as your team, and you work together, and then you deploy together. And so I was actually supposed to deploy. We deployed in, I want to say it was around October, November of 2005, and went over. So,
pretty kinetic deployment.
Yeah, absolutely. That was when I was in dive school going through, I was actually watching the guys that I was supposed to be with when they just touched down in Fallujah. And it was kind of gut-wrenching, because I knew I should have been there with them. I knew I would get there. But just, as you want to be with your original guys. I ended up meeting a lot more guys, and it's such a small knit community. And we finally made it over there in 2005 and loved it. We went through, took a ship over, and stopped in Kuwait. Zeroed in all of our rifles, and then went into country for 5-6 months.
Yeah. Anything specific happened there that you want to share?
Just the craziest thing that what I picked up being over there is the IEDs. You can get the most experienced and gnarliest guys in the world, and those IEDs just come out of nowhere. Yeah. And I mean, imagine like leaving here, driving back to the freeway, picking up somebody, and then coming back here, and then this intersection you just drove through, the entire grid is gone. Or maybe you missed a pressure pad, or maybe the guy wasn't there, or radio frequencies or whatever, and you're like, dude, I mean, you can get – it was literally safer for us to go 5-on-1 or 1-on-1 in a close quarter into a house, go right through the front door.
Right.
It's actually safer for us just because of the tactics we were trained in, what we use. And so driving down the road, it's like that pucker factor. We drove through one. We were the fifth vehicle in our convoy, so we got our gun turned around, and all of a sudden I hear someone go, watch out, watch out, watch out. And this car pulled in front of us, and boom, big explosion. And kind of rocked our vehicle. Some guys took some shrapnel. We drive through it. And we get way down the road, and we send our EOD guys that were with us. They walk down there, and they come walking back, and you see this look on their face. Like, basically, this car was filled with 155 rounds, those big artillery rounds.
Yeah.
And for whatever happened when the first one went off, it basically broke the daisy chain to the rest of them.
Yeah.
So then couple hours later, we let it all settle down, and we all walked down there, and you say, there's a round. You're talking artillery rounds this big. Yeah. There's a round. There's a round. There's one. There's one. And you could hear a pin drop because everyone knew that entire convoy should have been gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get all these guys with way more experience than what I had at the time and multiple deployments, very, very seasoned SF guys, and could all have been killed right there.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you guys doing a lot of door kicks?
A lot. Yeah, we did quite a bit, which was awesome. I loved it. We did, a bunch of different raids. We're probably 50 or 60 of them while we were over there. Different raids, sat on a bunch of sniper LPs, watching different roads. We had Bronze Road, which was right there. We'd sit there and watch these guys come in and dig holes. What they would do is they would blow up the road, and then when the vehicle has to go around the hole, the guys would go out there and then dig holes out there. So we sat on those for many a nights. It was just fun. I love doing all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I was single. I never wanted to come back.
Yeah. What year did you get out?
I got out end of 2006. So I actually had to extend because right when I was pretty much done with the pipeline, I was supposed to be getting out. Oh. My contract was up. So I extended to go over with those guys. So.
Yeah. And then you were just like, all right, time to move on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about your pipeline, and I'm like, well, no wonder being a red shirt was big deal. Like, oh, you need me to do a red shirt for longer? Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah, so they're like, yeah, I need you to go deliver this mail at the station. I was like, got it. I can do that.
What have I become?
Yeah. So
yeah. Did you ever have any regrets? Like at this point, like, hey, I got out. I had this really busy kinetic deployment. This, I'm living my dream. Doing Force Recon, and now I'm out doing civilian thing, headed in a different path.
Never once.
No,
I didn't, because I set out to reach certain goals. I reached those goals. It took me a little bit longer, a little bit different path starting out, but the end goal was I was able to make it to a force platoon. Mm-hmm. I kind of jumped some ships there to get over there. I got very fortunate. In fact, when I got over there, I had a lot of proving to do, which rightfully so. I mean, you have guys that have been on there for 8, 10, 12 years, and you're a guy that's only been in the military for a couple of years, So I had to prove myself a lot, which I was up for it, and I figured I might just, as long as you outwork everyone, you outwork everyone. They have no, like when have you heard someone say, God, that guy works his ass off, man. What an asshole. You know what I'm saying? So I was able to reach every goal that I wanted to do. I accomplished everything I set out to do. I did. And again, my dad gave me great advice. They were waving a lot of money in front of guys, for a completely schooled out force guy, a senior guy to re-up. At that time, like a big re-enlistment bonus was like 10, 15 grand. They were offering us like 80, 90 grand. And then you do it overseas, it's tax free. And so fortunately, my dad was like, hey, you didn't enlist for the money, so don't re-enlist for the money.
Like the money was an option before, Dad.
Yeah, right.
Hold on.
Yeah. So I got out, and a buddy of mine, Robert Gilbert, he was supposed to get out with me, come back, test. He re-upped, went back over, and then unfortunately took a round to the back of the head and was killed. Doing the exact same thing I was doing, putting breaches on doors, and sniper got him. So, but no, I've never had any regrets. Just different chapter.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
It's tough not to put yourself in his boots.
Yeah.
And think, well, man, that very well could have been me.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to know when it's time to turn a page on a chapter, and in your life, like it's hard to know, man. And but it sounds like I think you're looking at your goals and saying, hey, I did the things I came to do. So what do I have to gain by staying? And it's time to move on and do something else. So
it's time to move on, another chapter, and so then I came back and I got out, and I was doing a little bit of construction here and there, and I originally wanted to get on with PD, get on the SWAT team, and once I found out you had to be basically just an average or normal cop for so many years,
beat cop,
you couldn't just go right over, and it's like, it's not really for me.
Did you just tell him, like, hey, don't you know? Don't you know what skills I'm bringing?
Come on. Yeah, and it just, that wasn't an option, and I was actually working for a construction company. Yeah. And I met this guy who was doing the floors there named Trey Fugwe. And him and I started talking and BSing. And he's like, hey, man, you should come test for fire. And so I'm like, never really thought about that option, and that sounds cool. And so that's literally how it all started. And I started going down riding on ladder 9 on B shift with him and Dan Ioli, and those guys were huge helping me out. And so started working on my interview and all that stuff, and then I ended up getting hired.
Nice. So let's turn the page on that real quick. So you redshirted, blah blah blah, and off you go into your career, and you become an engineer. Now you're chauffeuring. How long were you a chauffeur?
Let's see, 7-8 years. I think about 7-8 years by the time of the accident.
Yeah,
I had been driving for a couple of years at 18. I did all my rescue time at 7, and then went over to 18. I was there for 3 years. Started driving over there, and
Nice. Before I got on the job, I had a good family friend who was a firefighter in LA City, older, my good bro's dad, right? And he was an engineer, and he's like, best job in the fire department. And I remember as I was coming up and I got promoted to engineer, and I was out there driving, I always thought about him and like how much fun it is to be an engineer, like until you run a call and it's 3 a.m.
Oh yeah.
And everyone in the truck's asleep on your way back
Snoring.
from the hospital.
Or a move up, everyone's snoring.
Yeah. You're only one awake, and I'm like, this is bullshit.
Or lunchtime, everyone's eating in the back or something.
Everyone gets on the truck with their plate of food, and you're over there like, sure wish I could eat.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of being an engineer?
Well, it's crazy because like when I was testing, Trey was like, hey man, he goes, best job fire department is BLS engineer on a ladder. And then of course at the time I didn't really know
what that means,
and I see it now, and I just loved it.
Yeah.
It's funny because the whole time for those 3 years we were going down to the academy and taking plugs and Jose's and doing skillies and that kind of stuff. And the guy's like, I'll get in the truck, I'll move it. I was like, you can have that. I don't want any part of that. No part of that. And I drove to a bunch of our raids overseas and stuff as well. And so I'd had some driving experience, and I grew up driving big trucks, long trailers, motorhomes, and I just never had the desire to drive. And then I remember I'm like, I'll go to 18 and hang out for a bit. I'll figure it out from there. And then I saw a couple of nasty calls where the medics are in there and people are throwing up on themselves. I was like, yep, driving it is. I want to be a medic. I was like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope. So, yes. And but then when I was taking the engineer test, I remember I had left 18, went out to 58 for Spanish strictly to study for the engineer test. I was like, if I'm taking the engineer test, I want to come out number 1. I don't want top 5. I don't want top 10. I want number 1 because I want wherever. I was always thinking in my mind, like wherever Trey's at in the city, wherever Daniel is at, those guys help me get hired. You know how it is when any test or list comes out. Well, let me see that list. I wanted them wherever they were at in the city to look and be like, that's the guy we stamp we name on right there. That's what kept me going. I wanted number 1 so bad. I remember going to the Gary Picari fishing tournament, and everyone's outside drinking or whatever, and I was inside the motorhome studying my flashcards. I wanted number 1 so bad. I ended up coming out number 2.
Oh, fucking
loser. Loser. So, but yeah. And but yeah, it all worked out, and then I roved around for just a little bit. I got really lucky, and then Matty Burnell had gotten promoted to captain, so he was out, so I slid over to 25. Been there ever since. So I literally went from 18. I went from 7 to 18 to 25.
Yeah. So 25, for those who don't know, is on the west side of Phoenix and is right in the Maryville community, and busy house, very busy house, 2 engine companies and a rescue and a battalion, and super active. What was your favorite part about working there?
It's just all the guys. I mean, there's all 3 shifts are awesome. I did a lot of CM on B, C. I did a lot of A-dubs there. It's like, these guys are just incredible. C shift has, when Ray Sanchez was there, hands down the best fish fry ever. I mean, you just, B shift and all their shenanigans and just having fun and smack talking and and then also what's cool is going training to the exact same places where we go on A shift, but then learning something else. You're like, oh shit, that actually went pretty good.
Yeah.
Going to like just your standard apartments and stuff, B shift was real good on that where, hey, let's try this. Let's do this. And you're like, what the hell are we going to do with that? And all of a sudden you're like, oh damn, that was pretty quick and really efficient. So just learning other stuff, so all 3 shifts there were great. I think, it's hard to find a station anywhere where you literally, like, I would take a spot here on any shift.
Yeah.
A, B, or C. They're all just great guys, all
Yeah.
like-minded guys. Everyone takes care of something. It's not like, oh, we don't like that person, we like this or whatever. It's like, it's super easy.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to hang a TV 20 feet in the air, like, cool, man, let's ask the other guys. Guys like, yeah, cool, man, hang your TV if you want. It just.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think I don't want to say maturity, but we have really good leaders there on all three shifts. You had Crowley and Sanchez there on C shift. You have TQ on B shift. We've had Troy Crawford, Adam Garday. I mean, I've had a string of just phenomenal captains, I had Ray Ochoa at 7, I had Gabe Sines at 18. Then I had Dougie Hospelhorn, Frank Gallo, and then Adam Garday. Like, I've had just phenomenal captains. I think it's just the leadership. Those guys do a really good job of just kind of setting the tone, setting the pace, lead from the front. That's how I was always raised, lead by example, not like what I'm just telling you. I think so. A lot of guys respect all of those captains and want to emulate and be like them. And so it just makes it easy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. All those names that you mentioned, I think about them, and they're all engaged people.
Yeah.
Right? They give a crap.
Absolutely.
They care about the mission. They care about the work that they're doing, and they care about their people.
Right.
And so and I've often said, I've come to the place I've arrived at in my career is that the company officer is the pivot point in the organization.
100%.
Right? The fire chief can stand on top of admin and wave their tiny little fist and be like, make this happen. But until the company officer says, we're going to make that happen, right? It's not going to get done because they are the pivot point where that edict gets operationalized.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. And so, and the way that I was kind of raised, like when I went through to jump back at the Recon school in Fort Story in Virginia, that instructor out there, his name was Major McDaniel. He was a major. Every single person that was at that base on that assignment, you could be the rigger, you could be the corpsman, you could be anybody. Every single morning, every one of them would come out and PT with us. Everyone, because he's like, hey, if I'm going to ask these guys to do it, we're going to lead from front and we're going to do it. If you can't hang, I get it. You're just a rigger. Move on. Plain and simple.
Go work somewhere else.
Lines drawn in the sand. Like, we are going to show these guys how we do it here. Yeah. We are going to be doing it with them, side by side with them. And I love that. Every single instructor was out there. And then, the California guys, just a little bit different approach. You wouldn't see an instructor for 5-6 weeks. Like, all of a sudden, here comes Rain showing up to teach land nav. Like, where the hell has this guy been? I haven't even seen him. It's just a different style of teaching. And so when I got over to 18 and I was a senior firefighter in the back seat, every single plug, every single hose lay, every single anything, I would go first to show him, hey, I know the standard take on plug is a minute 15. You better be way the hell in front of that. You better be low 50s and the 40s. It's a plug. It's a plug. Personally, I think you should be fired if you can't do it in under a minute, but that's my own opinion. But so I would take a plug. If he's going to pull it to the second floor, I'm going to go first. That way, at the end of the day, if we've been out training or move-ups or whatever, I want him to know. I want to know how he's feeling because I'm feeling the exact same way. If he's in turnouts, I'm in turnouts.
Yeah. Bottom
line. And so I really respect that at 25 because I see a lot of that over there. With our senior firefighters, they do the same thing. And also the captains. The captain's not just showing up with the radio, with the satchel on or whatever, listening to calls, still in his pants and boots. Like, he's got his turnouts on, his bunkers on, and getting right in there with them, which is that's how I am. Where you help the guys, you lead with them. Yeah. Work with them. Not over there just pointing fingers.
Yeah. Well, so two things come to my mind right here, right? So one is training is important, and I think that at every level, the leadership piece of that, right, showing up and demonstrating and leading by example, but setting the tone, I think is the biggest piece of that.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Like, this is what's expected. I do it. You do it. Why? Because we're all impacted by it. We all have different position and function on the fire ground, but at the same time, we're all have to work in the same environment.
Absolutely.
So, you don't get to be above that as a captain. You
Correct.
still have to go into put on your gear. You still have to go into an IDLH environment. You still have to go do the work.
Right.
Yeah. You may only have to hold a radio, but
right.
The work might be lightweight, but at the same time, you still got to go be with your people. And if shit goes sideways, heaven forbid, you have to be able to operate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the part that always troubled me was when people are like you said, right? They go out to a drill site. Well, you guys need to train. No, we all need to be training.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
It's good for everyone.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even going and taking these or probationary guys out and having them, take plugs and pull crosshays or whatever. It's even good for me because it's the way I step on the hose to make my connections, and it's all those those sets and reps getting them in, so it's just muscle memory. So that way, again, I said this before, like we train for the little stuff, so when the big stuff comes, it's not really that big.
Right.
It's just exactly what we've been taught, what we've been trained on,
Yeah, and I think you would agree that if you're not training, you're decaying.
Absolutely.
Right? Like
with everything.
Yeah, 100%.
With everything.
Right? All across your life, right? If you're not working on improving, then you're falling back, period. Mm-hmm. And I think people seem to lose sight of it. Like, I'm good. Like, dude, good. You can say that for today, but tomorrow you better be doing something. You better be training. It's
always, we always play that what if game, but then when shit actually hits the fan, then you're like, this is real. Just saying the training stuff, like
right. Well, and I'm sure you've heard people say, well, you mentioned the quote before, like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? Well, the opposite of that is when everyone's like, well, if something went down, I just see red, I go, I just show up, and I'm like, that is not how that works. Do you fall to your level of preparation, your level of training? You can aspire, but if you're not trained up, it's merely interesting. It's not about, you can have all the plans in the world, but if you're not trained up to it,
everyone's a badass sitting on their couch,
right? Right.
So it's different in real world, and like when we get to the accident, I'll talk about that because it's it was different.
Well, so let's turn the page on this and talk about that. So you've been an engineer now for a bunch of years, and then you had an accident that completely turned your career on its head.
Essentially, I don't say lost my career, which that's exactly what it is. I've lost my career. I try and reword it, change paths, kind of, be a little more positive about it. But yeah, it was a life-altering crash, career-altering crash, and an unavoidable crash, really.
Yeah.
And when we spoke earlier and you said, why do you want to be an engineer? So it's because of this right here, because I have done the sets and reps. I've always said that I want to be in that position. At the very beginning, I didn't want to do it driving. And then once I knew I was going the engineer path, like I'm thinking, okay, I want to be in control of that truck. I want to be the one, because most people are like, I don't want to be a driver. I don't want to be responsible for all these guys. Where I had a different mindset. I wanted to be in control of the truck. I want to set that tone and be a good engineer. I know everyone, and myself included, we always make fun of the engineers and stuff like that, but we also need good engineers out there. We need guys, for big water and driving and how you park the truck on the freeways and calls and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think we downplay the importance of the engineer, but the engineer is the only person who is working the entire time.
Right.
I mean, maybe on fires, they get some water going and they park it for a minute, but we talk about on the way to the call, on the way back from the call, going to the grocery store, the rig and all the conveying that we do of driving our guys around, that's hugely important.
Absolutely. And, a couple things. Adam said it best. He goes, the one thing we take for granted the most is driving to and from calls.
Yeah.
I mean, look how congested we all are now.
Yeah.
Even out here, this is all blowing up everywhere. Yeah. It's funny because even my son, he's 12 and he rides us all the time. And he's like, Dad, what are you going to do when we get a fire? I said, well, buddy, we're going to hook onto this hydrant. We're going to stop for a hydrant, and then we'll stay on the same side of the road and lay the supply line, go down. And he's like, then what? I go, then we're going to get out. We'll make our connections. The guys are going to grab the crosshays and go into the fire. He's like, then what? And so I kept going through all the process. He's like, then what? And then finally I got to the end. I was like, then you and I are going to go back to the pump pen and we're going to have our first cigarette together. He's like, what? I go, no, we're not going to have a cigarette. I said, but then we just support the guys. He's like, that's it? I'm like, what do you mean that's it? Like, there's a lot more to it, but.
I was working my ass off. That whole story had me working my ass off. What part did you miss?
Yeah, well, you missed that part. So it was pretty funny, though. But, yeah, Adam says it best when he's like, we take for granted, going to and from calls. And that was our standard EMS call. And before I get into the wreck part, I want to touch back years ago, which made me change my driving ways before I get there. It was Christmas Day. We had everyone down at the station. You know how it is with holidays. You have all the families, the kids, everyone. And we get a fire in 40s due. So we come out of our station. We start headed west. And I remember I had that truck pinned. Christmas Day. Everything's green, Opticons all the way to the 101, not a car in sight. I have it pinned. And I remember it even hitting my fifth gear, pinned. I'm rolling. And we get all the way there. I didn't think twice about it. Get all the way there, and it's a trash fire. And here the 40 guys say, we got it, we can handle. And I sat there, and I'm like, you idiot. Like, what are you doing? Like, you just drove that fast. I mean, there's nothing that outweighs you driving that fast, ever. Right. First off. Second off, like, you could have killed somebody and not only ruined their Christmas, you would have ruined everyone else's Christmas at the station. All the families, wives, kids, they would all have to go home. It would have been ruined. And I just sat there. I remember
and that's just the superficial piece.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yeah. And I sat there, and it just killed me. It absolutely killed me. My cabin time, he's like, you all right? I go, yeah, I'm good. I drove back. I think I was doing like 35 all the way home. And I got back, and even like my wife was there, and she was like, you all right? I go, yeah, I just did something stupid. And as stupid as it was, I learned from it, and I changed my ways that moment. And most people, I got very, very lucky, because I think a lot of people, something bad has to happen before they learn their lesson. They have to, I don't know, drink too much and get a DUI and go through that, and then you're like, oh, I'm never drinking again. Or drive that fast, get into a wreck, hurt somebody, then you learn from it. I got very fortunate that I learned a very, very good lesson, a lifelong lesson, and nobody was injured. It was just kind of one of those like, man, what are you doing? Yeah. And from that moment on, I completely changed my ways. And we got a brand new truck. And I remember talking with Chris West, our other engineer. Like, we had both had brand new trucks. I'm thinking, man, I feel like I spend more time looking at the speedometer, because the truck just wants to get up and go. It wants to get up and go.
Yeah.
You know, and so him and I both sat down and spoke. And he's like, hey, man, he goes, I don't want to drive like that. I go, neither do I. It's not worth it, man. And we both changed our ways, and we end up, on another aspect, we end up having a fire to the
he was your co-engineer in the
co-engineer, yeah.
So that's an important point to bring up, because in those dual company houses,
yeah,
there's a history of competition getting out the door.
Correct.
Right. And I know a lot of stations will, whoever gets mounted up first rolls out, and if you can beat your, haul ass to the fire, now you got first water, right, or whatever.
Right.
And I think coming up with, I think Phoenix came up back in the day with the rules of engagement. I can't remember what year that was, but the idea being that we shouldn't be racing each other to the fire, right?
Right.
Because it puts this pressure on us to beat the other guys there. And how many YouTube videos, we could probably pull up 100 YouTube videos of intersection accidents where trucks are coming from different directions trying to beat the other crew into the fire. It's horrible. 100%. And I know, and in dual company stations, coming up with some rules for the house, right? Like, hey, if it's north, we go. If it's south, you go. Whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Did you guys establish some parameters?
We absolutely did, man. And I personally love it. Some of the old school guys, when they rove in, they're a big fan of it. But at our house on A shift, it's in the company activity calendar. Plain and simple. 25, 925, 25, 925 for the entire month. Doesn't matter who's cooking. Doesn't matter who's on a move up. If you're in the barn, both trucks. There's been times we get in the truck. I'm buckled, fired up, ready, doors open. I'm looking. I was like, and you go, and it's a mutual respect, and on A shift we absolutely love it. Yeah. It slows everyone down just a little bit. I mean, we're not walking to the truck. Everyone still gets to the truck, but it's just a lot safer. Guys aren't flying in the truck and then rolling out, the doors closing and this and that, and and I'm going to get to that here in a second of why that's so important. And like I said, there's been so many times we've gone to fires and we come back and we see skid marks going around the intersections, and 100% was that guy. 100%. That's why I want guys to know, like, hey, man, I did that for years and years, man. At 18 here, and I learned my lesson. And so that day, that Christmas day, I learned my lesson, and I'm very fortunate I did. And so it's probably a year or two later, we had a fire north in Glendale, and we're driving the standard speed, driving code 3 to a T. It came out that somebody was trapped, and Mike Doran we got there safe, got there efficiently. Mike Doran went in, fought a little fire, pulled the lady out, save. It just goes to show you, even when it's a real call, a real fire, a real save, a rescue, it all works out. And we have so many things in place for that reason, to keep guys safe. And so now here we are. We fast forward, and the day of the wreck, standard day, we're all working out in the gym. 25 gets a call. They were cooking. So, okay, man, we got it. So standard what we do. And we get on the call, get on the truck, and we page the captain. He gets on the truck, and I remember getting on the truck. I take a drink of water. I set it down. I'm driving through. We turn left is one of our regulars we're going to, and right there, going up to pretty much where the crash was a little bit further, it's 40, and then right after the crash, it goes up to 45 for the speed limit. And so we're rolling through. We're doing 45 exactly, right, dead smack in the middle of Code 3 driving rules, and I'm looking straight ahead. We go through and I've always said in the past, which I'm sure you did a lot, you're like, oh, well, I can get unbuckled real quick. I'm not in an intersection, or we're not turning, or we're not this, or whatever, and you throw a suspender on, or throw a buckle on, or whatever. This goes to show you that doesn't work either. So we're going through the intersection, and I'm sitting there driving. I'm looking straight ahead. I'm driving 9 and 3. I was still sweating, because I was kind of working out. And all of a sudden, I had to look down, and there was a car. And so I tried the evasive, and boom, just a violent impact. And what we had talked about before about why these Code 3 driving rules are in place, like if those guys had been standing up in the back seat, they would have went straight through the windshield, straight out. And so a few things happened right off the bat, which are important to talk about. The first thing, I remember taking just a
Hold
violent...
on 1 second. Where the hell did that car come from?
Well, that's the thing. So we're going through the intersection. Cars, we're headed westbound. Cars coming east, comes up, stops. This car is at a dead stop right here. We're still coming through. Another car behind that car comes full speed, boom, hits that car, throws the car in front of us right as we're going by.
Oh, wow.
And so you watch all the surveillance videos from the apartment. It shows the guy at a dead stop.
Yeah.
But his wheels were turned to the left, like he was getting ready to go around a car, whatever. Yeah. So when this car comes, this car never even hit the brakes, full speed, boom, hits him, just happens to throw him
Shoves him in front of you.
Right. I mean, we T-boned him. So I tried the evasive. A few things happened right off the bat. Number one, I knew I was injured. It's not like, in like your football days or whatever, when you're a kid, when coach say, hey, are you injured or are you hurt?
Yeah.
You're hurt, walk it off. Are you injured? Okay, you're injured. Like I knew I was injured.
Yeah.
I knew I was injured bad. So I had my headset on. My head hit the B post, knocked my headset off. The dash completely collapsed on me. Yeah. And it shot air in my seat and raised my seat all the way up. So now I'm pinned sideways under the truck like this, and I'm kind of over here by the door because when I did the evasive, it shoved me this way.
Yeah. My
head hit the B post, and so that split second, it rattled me. And when the wheel came in, the wheel blew out my shoulder. So now I have my shoulders blown out, my legs are pinned underneath there. It had already blown out my PCL, my patella, and my MCL, which I learned later. My head's cut open from hitting the B post. And so if those guys hadn't been buckled in the back seat, and the windshield came out on the impact. And so if those guys hadn't been buckled, they would have went straight out the front windshield. And I'll be quite honest with you, man, I probably would have ran them over because I took such a shot that I had lost control of the vehicle for a split second. Yeah. And so when we were talking about my former life and my prior history, I think this is where it comes into play. So all these injuries I have are at that point in time are merely interesting. Okay, your shoulder's blown out, neat. Okay, your knee's blown out, you're pinned under the dash, neat. Nobody cares right now. This truck is still rolling, right? This ain't one of those times where, and this is what I don't like, how they teach our new members and just kind of like life inside. It's like, you just try your best and you'll get there. This ain't one of those try your best moments. Like, you fucking better get control of this truck. All these injuries you have, your shoulder's blowing out, your head's bleeding, whatever, neat. Nobody cares right now. You will get control of this truck. You have to get control of this truck. All these people in this truck are depending on me. Right. This ain't one of those try your best moments. Like, you better get control. You will get control of this truck, and you will stop this truck. It's just a different mindset. This ain't, but we teach guys these days where, just take that plug or pull that, just try your best. If you get tired, take a break. Absolutely fucking not. This is not one of those try your best moments. Like, you will get control of this truck. And so I look up, and now I'm pinned to the side, and we're going straight towards a palm tree.
And did you guys hit that vehicle?
We hit them.
Were you able to get around it, or you clipped them at that point?
We basically, tried the evasive, and when the vehicles came out, it kind of hit the front left of the truck and the door, and then transferred all that force into the cab, which came into me.
Okay.
And so now I'm pinned sideways. We're going right towards the palm tree. And I'm thinking if we center punch this palm tree, like I'm for sure dead. Mm. And I grabbed the wheel and I'm fighting the wheel. And you know how when you, like when the hose bed slides off the truck and you got to do a brake check to slide the hose forward, you know? You know how like the truck kind of locks up a little bit, you know? Well, that's what the truck was doing the entire way. And I remember fighting, holding on to the wheel. This shoulder's worthless. Like I said, I'm pinned sideways. I'm trying to basically go like one of these to stop the truck.
Yeah, trying to jam the brakes.
And I took another hard right, and all of a sudden my head hit the B-post a second time. And that's what split my head and my ear open. And man, I would like to say that I stopped the truck. I think we bounced off so many things. Like we went through a couple small pony walls, couple block walls, like the concrete barricades out front that says 7007, whatever. Blew through that. Cinder blocks went everywhere. And when we went by the palm tree ended up ripping both doors off the truck. It ripped off my door, ripped off the back door. And when it did, it cut my ribs and cut me all open and blew out all my ribs on this side. Mm. And a couple things like so we've finally come to a stop. And when you look at pictures of the truck, where that tree is compared to where the truck stopped, that tree is past my seat, past the rear seat, and all the way back to where the engine compartment is on the side of the truck. So myself and the senior firefighter would have been dead for sure. And the day before that wreck, my son was sitting in that jump seat, and we have a picture of behind me. And there's a picture of all that gear was ripped out of the truck with the door and was hanging in the tree. That's where he was sitting. And then the next shift, Mike Lorenz's son Theo was supposed to be down there with us and riding along. We got lucky, and so we come to a stop, and I look back and I go, Mike, are you guys all right? He goes, yeah, you good? And I go, fuck, Mike, my legs. And I look down and the dash is completely collapsed on me. My legs are kind of spaghetti like this, crossed. My ribs, I thought I punctured a lung. I'm kind of holding on to the A-post because I felt like I was going to fall out. But I'm trying to hold on with this shoulder blown out. My ribs are destroyed. I'm bleeding here. My legs are cut open. I got the back of my calf cut off. And so Mike comes around, and so we had Mike Lorenz and Kenny Berryhill in the back seat. Kenny Berryhill is her first rotation, which I will say, absolute stud. She did phenomenal. It's just kind of one of those muscle memory stuff. You know, we do such a good job of working with other people and training and that kind of stuff. And so Mike goes, Kenny, get a collar on him. Kenny gets out. She gets the collar, grabs all the boxes, comes around, and they're basically going to start working on me right here. Mm-hmm. And so I knew the cavalry was coming, but it felt like an eternity. I couldn't breathe. Like I said, I thought I punctured a lung. Why I thought that, I didn't realize it was just all the ribs I broke. Yeah. And so Mike comes around and he's like, gee, I could hear it in his voice when he came around. He was like, gee, he's like, dude, you're effed up, man. He goes, stop moving. They got to cut you out. I go, Mike, get me out of here. He goes, stop moving. I go, Mike, I feel like I'm going to fall, man. I go, get me out of here. And you can just hear it in his tone, you know, 'cause we laugh, we have fun, you know how it is. And then when it's like, it's not what he was saying, it's how he was saying. I'm like, oh man, I know I'm in bad shape. Yeah. And we've all been on those calls where, hey, this person doesn't need a bunch of firemen and Band-Aids and ice packs. Like, this person needs a trauma room and a doctor. Right. Not an EMT refresher guy, you know? And so I knew at that point I was that patient. And they just did a great job, man. And Engine 40 had heard our captain call the alarm room, could kind of hear it in his voice. And
did he call a mayday?
I don't believe so, no. Okay. And Engine 40 was responding to an EMS call, could kind of hear it in his voice. So it was Bouchard, and he said his guys were walking up. So he kind of stayed on the truck, listened to the radio, and that's when he called and said, hey, we've been in a 962, our engineer's trapped, and the whole – I've never heard the radio traffic, but that's what he told me. He said Bash heard that, called his guys back on the truck. They AVL'd us, came flying over. So they were first there. They kind of jumped the call. And so by that time, I'm still in the truck. Mike climbs up, and he asks for a crowbar, try and pry. I'm like, man, that ain't going to work. And Mike basically just came up and straddled me to the right. I remember teasing him because he gets up in the truck, and I was like, oh, man. I go, dude, you could stand here? You could stick it. You're a shorter guy, but he's stronger than shit. And basically straddles me and grabs a wheel and kind of just like a deadlift. And I was like, at first I'm like, that ain't going to work. And all of a sudden the whole dash lifts up. I was like, oh, shit. And I kind of move my legs a little bit. And then he drops it back down and crunches me again. And I go, Mike, do that one more time. And so he basically did another deadlift, lifted the dash, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And by that time, the 40 boys had shown up with their ambo. And I kind of fell out of the truck and landed right on the gurney, and off I went. And so I didn't know it was 40 or any of those guys, and I thought I was getting my Rescue 25 guys. They were on another call, and so when I kind of looked over and I saw Rescue 40, and I didn't know the Engine 40 guys were there yet. So they got me in the back of the ambo, and I'm in my collar, and I'm just wincing in pain. My knee's destroyed, my calf's cut off.
You were thinking, I need some of those ibuprofens from the.
Yeah, I need 800 milligram ibuprofen from the. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I kind of go like this, and I see Bouchard. And I tell you what, I hope guys on the fire department can be that guy that when you show up to a station, guys are like, oh, sweet man, Rain's here. Sweet man, we got Bash. Just be that guy. You know, when you're at your absolute worst, and I look over and I see him, it's like, I was like, I'm good.
I'm in good hands.
I know I'm in good hands. Don't be that guy who look over and like, oh shit, you know, which we've all seen that. We've all seen those guys walk up to the station or whatever. But just carry yourself where you're that guy. Where just carry yourself that way. Be that person. You know, do your best. You know, don't be that lazy person. Like I can't tell you the relief I had when I looked over and saw him. I'm thinking, oh man, I am at my absolute worst, and I could not think of a better guy to be taking care of me and running this. And he just took control of the whole situation. There was a couple other people, captains getting a little spun up, and he just kind of like just took control. You know, I'm not going to name drop or anything, but he just basically was like, hey, I got this. Close the door. He's in good hands. A couple other guys jumped in the truck. And yeah, they just got me to the hospital, and he asked me, he goes, hey man, he goes, what do you want? And I go, I don't know. I don't even know what's in that box. Like, I don't even touch it, you know? And all of a sudden, it was like light. He asked me, he goes, what hurts the worst? And I go, honestly, man, I think I punctured a lung. I go, I can't breathe. I can't take a full breath. He did the whole lung sounds. I was like, hey man, I think you're good. I think you just busted some ribs. All of them. And
as it turns out,
all of them. And so yeah, they got me to the. I remember he gave me something, and I remember like lights out. And I'm thinking, dude, am I spiraling right now? Like, is this how I'm going out? And I remember getting into Good Sam. And I could hear the gurney going down, but I had no idea. I couldn't move a limb. I couldn't nothing. Transferred me over, and next thing I had people working on my calf and this up here, and then I kept telling the doctor, hey man, my ear hurts, and they went to kind of move my ear kind of flopped off where it cut me open, so they had to call somebody else. Had someone stitching me up here, down there, and but yeah, we got extremely lucky. There was no one had a scratch on them, nobody else but me.
Yeah, that's that which is a miracle in itself.
Yeah, it's just I really think so. I really do. I mean, we tried the best we could, and I say we because it was a group effort. You know, from Mike and Kenny helped me get out of the truck to Bash and the 40 guys, and just even PD blocking off intersections and getting me to the hospital. I mean, it really was a group. Yeah, I was one behind the wheel at the time, but everyone else, there was a lot of people that helped out there. Yeah, a lot.
Side note: what happened to the dude that got pushed in front of you guys?
What's crazy is he was pretty much fine. He had like some shoulder pain, bumped his head, but he got hit from behind and then smoked by a fire truck, and he had like some shoulder pain and some head pain. And
pretty fucking lucky.
He got real lucky. Yeah. I mean, if we hadn't done that evasive, and that's what I try and talk with guys. It's that, you know, yes, we tried the evasive. That's what we're always taught. And I think what we talked about earlier is that you're always trying to improve and get better and learn and train. And, if you were to go into a fire and get burned, we would completely dissect that.
Yeah.
Where was he at in the house? How much air did he have? What was he doing? What was the pressure? All that stuff, right?
Right.
So with this wreck, and I'm not saying we should change it. I'm just saying it's at least a conversation, meaning, I did the evasive because that's all we're taught, right? Which is great. If you have time, there's fine print there. If you have time. And so we did the evasive because that's all we're taught. But if I had gone straight and not swerved, I mean, think of it this way. I'd still have my job. I wouldn't have life-altering injuries. I wouldn't be taking medical retirement. My son's pretty bummed out, really upset because he'll never be on a fire truck with me again. There's all these things that we tried the evasive, and doing that evasive, the car hit basically the front corner side of the truck, which forced that impact to the door, which forced that to me.
Yeah.
Option B, we don't have time to do this, and it's just luck of the draw. We let the bumper do its work, what it's there for. I mean, you hate to say that, but it's at least a conversation like, hey, it's basically our risk management profile, right? It's the same thing. I mean, it's wrong place, wrong time for that car. However, I mean, I care about that car, I really do. But I care more about you and your family and your kids. I care more about Mike and his wife and his 2 boys. I care more about Kenny and her family. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's who I care about. That's how you care about. That's how we all are. So if push come to shove, if it's us or somebody else, I think everybody would pick the same option. I just think it should just be a conversation with our newer drivers or guys. Like, hey guys, yes, the evasive absolutely works. We know it works. However, if you have time, if you don't, you have to let the truck do what the truck is designed to do.
Well, and throwing around 40,000 pounds is
correct.
It has the laws of physics apply, right? And it causes some pretty dynamic responses.
Absolutely.
Especially when you add in the collision piece, which forces your trajectory, into a different direction.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So
okay. So it's been a minute now. What, 1.5 years, 2 years?
1.5 years, yeah.
So you've obviously told me the other day that you had recently had your 5th surgery.
5 surgeries total, yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously the accident was pretty horrifying. How has that recovery process been for you?
It's been an absolute roller coaster, to be honest with you. After I was in the hospital, I went to a short-term care facility, and I was there for about 14 days. I got on the truck that day, covered in sweat from running, and about 2 weeks later, I was learning how to walk again with a walker and 2 tennis balls going down a hallway. I remember I got to like 4 or 5 feet because we measured on the wall. Had to sit down. I essentially had to learn how to walk again. And I didn't want to go to the facility. I just wanted to go home, be with my family, be with my kids. Yeah. And I'm so glad I did because they were amazing. Yeah, I was doing therapy 4 times a day there. And I absolutely 100% needed that facility. Mm. I 100% did. And I'm so glad that I did because they were phenomenal. There's basically teaching you how to get dressed with your injuries, which I couldn't do. I couldn't shower. I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself. I'm thinking, you went from the highest high to the lowest low, and so I had a surgery that night in the hospital, and then they actually call it the dashboard break when the dashboard comes in and blows your knee out backwards. And so I ended up having PCL and meniscus surgery. That was surgery number 2. A few months later down the road, did a lot of therapy, did a work hardening program trying to get the knee to come around, nothing. Ended up having another MRI, and then had a patella surgery in the front, which while they were in there, supposed to be a real quick surgery. They're supposed to go in with the scopes on each side. They went in with the scope, found a lot more damage, had to recut the knee in the same.
What were they going to do to the patella?
Basically just clean it up.
Okay.
So I was having a bunch of pain in the front, and they were going to just go in there and clean it up, and they realized that it was a lot more damage, and so they ended up having to cut the original scar, open it up. Then they had to cut the patella, put a stitch. Then there was some bone damage. They had to cut part of the bone, put an anchor in the bone. And then while they were stitching me up, the needle broke off inside, and the needle's still in there. Right? Right? You're like, and not to mention I woke up with the same brace that I just gotten rid of 6 months ago. I'm like, God damn it, that same brace. Just a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And It's tough. It's a whole. It's just tough, man. I don't know how to explain it. It's and people are always like, with your previous life, man, like you can handle anything, and it's like, man, it's hard to handle this. It's just it's so different.
You said something just a minute ago that kind of it's put a little seed in my head that I can't shake out right now. But you said, you were running on the treadmill, and in my mind, I'm like, and you'll never run again.
Never.
And and what would have been different if you'd have known, hey, this is the last run I'll ever do. And do we ever know when our last whatever is, right? So, you and I were talking before I hit record about grief and about like these life altering moments and how our lives how we have to make these pivots. And you're leaving behind something that, from what you were telling me earlier, you weren't a great runner anyway. So right. I don't think the world's losing a fantastic runner. So
no.
But this is something that you did. It's a part of who you were, right? And now, not anymore.
Right.
Right. And so let's talk about what's changing in your career right now. Right. Yeah. You recently applied for medical disability or medical retirement.
Yeah. And to touch back on that, like I ran for so many years in the military that I think it's probably why I hate it. So every time I run, I'm that guy, I got to put tape over the treadmill and then I'll peel it back. I'm like, we're only going a half mile. So the running aspect, yes, it sucks, but I'm okay with that. So I still do a lot of swimming and biking and other stuff. And so.
Well, in what ways has your life been completely altered by this incident?
I mean, across the board. You go from working a ton of hours being around the guys to literally nothing. I mean, like the complete opposite. And how our job is. Like, I love our job. I don't feel like it's work. I call it adult recess. Like, we go in there to have fun with the boys, and we chat. It's a great time. And then to go from that to sitting at the couch or sitting in the chair, and like, no, there's times, I'll be honest with you, man, that I go look at my calendar for the day, and it's blank. And you're like, I mean, not even like a kid's soccer practice, nothing. I mean, and you're like, what am I going to do all day? And I'm still trying to figure that out, and I want to get more involved with this and traveling around. And Adam and I went to Prescott Fire last year and spoke to all those guys about the accident and stuff, and it was awesome because I want guys to learn and how we do with all of our other incidents. We learn from it, we get better. Yeah. And so after the third surgery, when I woke up from that surgery, it was exactly a year later, and I'm thinking, man, I'm a year out from this wreck. I'm still having surgeries and a major surgery. I'm like, this just ain't working. The body ain't coming around. It's just, I think the medical retirement was more of a reality. And then once I had decided, I think, okay, I think this is a real option. I started looking into it and getting more knowledge about it and learning about it. And once it was hard because I had to have some talks with my kids, and my son was destroyed over it. There's so many emotional factors with this, and it's hard because I almost, and I know it's not the way to think, but part of me is like, man, I wish you were speeding that day. I wish you were outside of code 3. So it could at least be a life lesson for my kids. Like, hey, look, like you speed, this is what happens. You drive outside of code 3, this is what happens. But when you do everything right across the board, when my captain that day called me, I don't know, 2 weeks after the accident, he goes, hey, Glenn, I'm gonna be speaking with the detectives tomorrow, and it's okay. And I said, hey man, I really respect the call. I do. I said, but this ain't one of those times where you and I need to go have a beer or coffee and talk about what happened. I go, tell them whatever you want. And that was the conversation. I said, I think it's very respectful. You're calling me to kind of touch base. I said, but this ain't one of those times. You tell them whatever you saw from your seat. I'm confident with everything, from the brake check in the morning to checking off the truck to everything. My speed, I've driven the intersection 5,000 times. I know where the speed limits are. I know where the speed limit signs are at, east, west, north, south. I appreciate it, man. But you tell them whatever you think you saw. And so it's hard to digest everything that's happened when you did everything right.
Right. Yeah. At least if you had made a mistake, you could say, well, I fucked up.
Correct.
And I got these consequences because I made this error.
100%.
And in this case, it's almost like, well, this is not the right analogy, but in my mind, I go, it's like when a little kid gets cancer, Like, dude, what the hell is
Right.
going on with this universe?
Right.
It's this thing. You're like, hey, I'm doing all the right things, and yet I still have these tremendous consequences because of that.
Correct. And so but a positive outlook on that is to do something a little more rewarding and more fulfilling, to teach guys like, hey, look, man, you have a guy with not the most average background coming into this, right? With real life experience, a lot of driving experience, plus driving in one of the busiest stations in the state at 18, and then coming here, like, I have real experience, and I think that carries a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
And so it just goes to show you can have it anybody.
Right.
Anybody at any time.
Right.
So I just hope that guys learn from it and get better from it, because it's, I mean, I'm nowhere near an older guy, but I do have some time on, and it's even different from when I got on, different from when you got on, where guys are driving and flying around corners, and we've learned from everything, like across the fire department, across everything.
Yeah.
We just learn and we get better from it.
Yeah. Well, and that's an important lesson for us, is we always have to be continuing to evolve as in our industry, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And, we know that the operational context in the fireground has changed. Risk management has changed in the sense, particularly when it comes to, driving apparatus in busy cities.
Right.
Right. You can't take the same risks that our predecessors took.
Absolutely. And it's just getting more and more congested.
Yeah.
And so I've had 5 surgeries now. So my accidents, or my injuries total, is I had a bunch of glass in my ankle. I got the back of my calf cut off. I got, like I said, a meniscus, PCL, and patella surgery. Broke all these ribs. I got cut open over here. My shoulder, they had to fix 3 different parts in the shoulder. They made 5 holes in there. And I got a bunch of scars in my head before I hit. So I was in pretty bad shape, but it's pretty phenomenal to see. We've gone on so many accidents, but when it's our own guy, the guys are just phenomenal. So was Kenny, and it's so I hope people learn from it. I've been doing surgeries and therapy and ever since the accident.
Yeah.
It was 1.5 years ago.
So, when you talk about guys learning from it, what's the main takeaway from you?
The main takeaway is you're in control of that truck. You as a captain, it's not your job to check on my truck that I'm driving, right? I don't tell you how to be a captain. You should not be. We're all grown men here, right? If I see something, I need to bring it up to the captain. It's on you. And we've all been to these company or these station multi-engine companies. You see a guy like pump the brake down, pop the brake, you're good. Are you kidding me? That's 1/10 of what you're supposed to do. You don't think they're going to pull that out? You don't think they pulled that after this wreck? Bet your ass they did. And so you do all the small things, so when the big things, they're not that big. That's what I'm saying. And what I said earlier, it's like, you're like, the captain runs the day-to-day truck, but overall, like, the engineer is in control of that truck. You need to check the truck out. And it's almost like offensive, I feel like, these days. Like, hey, man, do your job. Like, if someone told me that, do your job, I'm like, first off, fuck you. Second off, I'll do my job and your job together. Like, I would take offense to that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am doing my job and I will do my job. Don't ever say that. But nowadays, you tell, hey, man, it's like you're almost in the wrong. Hey, man, that's your job. Do your job. That's nothing bad about that. That is your job. Take care of that truck.
Right.
Do your job. And your job is to make sure that truck is safe for your other guys. I mean, at my station, every single person there has family and kids. Think of it that way. Right? So, the brake check just failed a little bit. Bullshit a little bit. No, it failed.
Right.
If you don't want to make that decision, bring that to the captain, let him make that decision.
Yeah.
But you're in charge of that truck, man. You do that brake check the correct way. You could bet your ass if I had done that brake check incorrectly or skipped a few things, they'd be like, well, we would never know because maybe you could have stopped, which we all know there's no way in hell.
Right.
However, that's one thing they could bring up.
You definitely know from the litigation side of that, if we're not doing our part, that will be exploited against us.
Absolutely.
Regardless of how the accident happened.
Right.
Yeah.
But guys just need to know, like, hey, man, that's your job. You got hired because you said you would do your job. So fulfill that promise that you made.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be offensive at all. Do your job, plain and simple. But I think a lot of guys forget that, or they get complacent.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
And so, but yeah, it's been life altering for sure. So now on to something else.
Yeah. What's that look like? We don't know yet.
Might be a Walmart greeter. I don't know.
There you go. I'm sure that'll be rewarding in its own special ways.
I mean, just like the previous, I'll be out there just like ringing the bell and just like ding, ding, ding.
Well, hey, let me ask you a couple rapid fire questions.
Yes, sir.
Just simple answers. Favorite firehouse meal?
Smoked green chili.
Oh, I'm very refined.
Smoked green chili.
Refined taste. I like that.
I'm all about the effort in cooking, and the guys just fire something off. It's just, yeah.
They got to put some love in it.
Put some love. Whatever it is, effort. Put a little effort in there.
Nice. The last part of your body that you pulled a piece of glass out of?
Funny you should mention that because my left calf. And so I had a bunch of glass everywhere. I had metal all over me. That was probably the worst thing when I was in the short-term care facility. I couldn't shower yet. So every time I'd roll over, there'd be metal flakes and glass all in the bed. And it was just... Anyway, so I had a piece of glass in my ankle. They found like 6 months after, was a huge chunk right there. That scar is because this bone was sticking out. So I went to the health center and they take an X-ray and they said they were going to send it off. And she said, "Yeah, we don't need to send it off. We could see it right here." It's just a big old chunk of glass. Well, it had grown over, so it was actually a full blown surgery. I thought they were going to go numb it, pull it out. It was like get there 2 hours prior, check you in, IV, recovery, the whole nine. It's a big surgery. Anyway, it actually hurt like hell. But before that, I had a piece of glass in my calf. I actually thought it was a piece of metal. And I had gone to urgent care, or not urgent care, but I had gone to our fire department health center. I'd gone to my primary. I'd gone to the surgeon who had done my other surgeries. And they're like, hey, go here, go here, go there. Finally, at like the fourth or fifth stop over 2 months, I'm like, I'm done with this. So I literally went out to my garage, got a little razor blade, burned it, which I thought made it clean.
That's what I heard. That's how I understand
and literally
it.
Went into my bathroom, cut the back of my calf, and got my tweezers and pulled it right out. Because what happened was there was like the opening was like this big, so I went to go put my tweezers in. It wouldn't open up enough to grab it. So I'm like,
you would have known that if you were a surgeon, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, EMTB is almost identical. So, I'm like, I just make a little incision. I'll get that thing right out. And so sure enough, I went there and cut it. And my wife came home. There's blood all over the counter. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, got it. And cleaned it up a little bit, fired some super glue on there. And it's actually, you can see that's actually the best scar that I have. Super glue. Who would have thought?
All right, last question. What does it mean to you to be fireground fit?
It's essential. It's essential. It comes back to the whole trying your best part. If we go into a fire and you go down, I'm not going to go in there and try my best. Just put in some good effort, whatever. Like, absolutely fucking not. Like, I will absolutely pull you out no matter what happens. And you need to be physically fit to do that. That's just plain and simple. We're both bigger guys with all of our gear on. We're every bit of 300 pounds. You have to be able to pull that guy out or that gal out. You have to. It is not an option. It's not one of those, I'm going to try my best. And if it works, it works. But, I tried. Bullshit. Absolutely not. So you have to be cardio wise. I've always said it's all cardio and legs is what it is. That's cool. You can bench 400 pounds, man. That's neat. Cool. Nobody cares what you can curl either, but
right on.
It's essential.
Right on. Well, if people want to get in touch with you, follow your progress, where would they find you at?
I've had the same phone number since like 7th grade, so they can call me, show up to my house, ask any of the 25 boys. I think I'm fairly well known around the department, so ask anybody. I'd love to talk with guys if they have any questions. Questions about me using, my own insurance for the wreck and some other stuff.
Do you have an email people could reach out to you?
I do. It's gcrossusmc@aol.com.
Right
it's
on.
a pretty sweet AOL account.
All right, Devil Dog.
I'm a loyal customer for AOL.
Yeah, I don't hear that AOL very often.
I'm loyal.
Yeah.
People are jumping over to the Twitter and the MySpace and all that, the Gmail. I'm loyal.
That's right. Right
Supposedly.
on, brother. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you, man. It was awesome being here. Thank you.
Right on, brother. Hey, that's all we got for today, folks. Thanks, Glenn, for your time and your sharing your story with us. If you are enjoying this podcast, folks, get on over to Apple Podcasts, rate and review the podcast. And that helps drive traffic and drive listenership, etc., to share these stories and these lessons learned. If you have any questions or comments, reach out to Rain Gray at firegroundfitness.com, and I will be happy to entertain your commentary, inquisitions, questions, what have you. Lastly, take the lessons that we learned from Glynn about being the thoughtful and considerate driver, and about training and preparation, lessons learned about digging in during hard times. Imbue those things into your life. Go on out there and get some.